So you can see the screen, right? Can one of you please confirm?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so let me just start the recording. Okay, recording is fine. So in the last class, we are talking about the different kind of distributed consensus protocols. So we have looked into that. This research in distributed systems that have started in 1980s, which actually talked about different types of message passing protocol, and it nowadays it has quite an established literature that discusses different classes of distributed consensus protocol, and it explains the consensus protocols from different directions. So from that perspective, we have seen that in a blockchain, typically the problem that we have is like that whenever a new block has been generated, then the participants of the block need to agree on the nonce that have been generated, right? Because that nonce parameter that you have seen earlier, it connects a block with the previous block with the help of cryptographic hash. So what we need to ensure that because it is a kind of distributed environment and everyone is maintaining their own copy of the blockchain, basically I need to ensure that whenever a new block is generated in the system during that time, everyone can have access to that particular block and everyone can verify that this block is the correct block that need to be added in the current blockchain. So that way, every participants in the systems are in the same page and they know that well everyone is using the same copy of the blockchain for all the processes. So that is the kind of broad goal that we have, and that particular goal maps to the classical distributed consensus algorithm. And we have seen in the last class that there is a fairly good amount of literature that has established the distributed consensus protocol from different aspects. And remember the FLT impossibility theorem that we have discussed in the last class, which actually talk about that even with a single crash fault, it is impossible to set up a consensus algorithm in a perfect asynchronous system. And because our network behaves asynchronously, because we might have arbitrary delay in message passing, that's why FLP impossibility theorem gets applied there. And with a single crash fault, we cannot support both safety and liveness of the corresponding protocol. So what we have to do, we have to give priority to either safety or liveness. And the classical distributed consensus algorithm, they have priority to the safety property because the safety property actually ensures that, well, at the end of the protocol round, every participants in the protocol, they reach to a common page where everyone agree on a common value. Right? So that is the kind of safety protocol that we have. Now, from the distributed consensus literature, let us now today move to the history of cryptocurrency. And later on, let us see that how the path of cryptocurrency and the path of distributed consensus, they actually get merged with this concept of blockchain or the kind of architecture of blockchain that we see today. So what is a cryptocurrency? A cryptocurrency was basically an automated payment system having certain properties like the inability of the third parties to determine who is to pay, what is the time of payment, or the amount of payment that was made by the individual. Well, so this property is something like the similar of our normal node or coin-based money payment system. So people started thinking of about the cryptocurrency because there was multiple different problems that we face in the physical world while you carry the physical node, because the node can be teared, the node can get destroyed, then there can be different scenarios like whenever you are carrying a node and there is a rain, the node might get distorted, and then a node might get stolen. There is a possibility that you have pickpocket and your entire money got stolen. So that kind of issues were there with normal currency notes. So that's why people started thinking of that whether we can have a digital currency And from that particular aspect, in the initial days of cryptocurrency, people started to define the properties of cryptocurrency similar to the one that the physical currency has. Well, so that means the first one is that the inavailability of the third parties to determine the time of the payment and the amount of payment made by the individual. So you see that is similar to our normal payment systems using physical currency, because whenever you are going to a shop, paying some money and getting some potatoes or getting some rice, during that time, only you and shop owner made the transaction. So other people in the world, they do not know at what time you have purchased a potato and at what price you have purchased a potato and so on. Well, so that is a kind of general agreement between the payee and the person who received the payment. So same kind of property you expect in a cryptocurrency, that whenever certain payments are being made between two parties, that would be oblivious to the third parties. The third parties will not be able to see that what is going on in that payment. Well, but there should be an ability to show the proof of payment. Well, because whenever you have made a payment over the digital media and later on if the person who is about to get the payment, that person denies that, hey, you have not made the payment, then you should have certain kind of proof. So typically in our physical world, these proofs are the bills or the receipt that we receive from the person whenever you are making certain kind of payment. Well, and finally, the ability to stop the use of payment media reported stolen. So for example, say if your money get pickpocketed in a normal scenario, typically the rule is that you go to the police station, complain about that, and you report it there so that the amount or the money or the currency notes that have been stolen, no one can use that stolen money in the market. So the same kind of rule applies here in case of cryptocurrency, that you should be able to stop the payment media that have been reported stolen. Well, and you see that ensuring this kind of guarantee, many of the time it is very difficult to ensure on a physical level, particularly the third requirement, because we do not remember the number of every currency note. So we do not write down the number for every currency note. So that's why if you got pickpocketed, we can report in the police station, but we cannot say precisely that, well, this is the currency note that got stolen. Well, so if you can provide them to the police station, then police station might have certain way to stop it. Well, but in a typical physical environment, that is difficult to ensure. Well, so that's why people started thinking about this kind of digital payment media, and they tried to think of that, well, can I use the digital environment to track the payment in an anonymous way? So that was the basic idea behind cryptocurrency. And many of you might think of that Bitcoin is the first cryptocurrency in the market, but that is not. This research in cryptocurrency is also quite old. So the initial idea of the cryptocurrency that was came into the market, that was in 1983, the idea called eCash by one cryptographer named David Chaum. His idea was that, well, the money is stored in the computer, but that particular money, that would be digitally signed by the bank. Well, so what would be the authenticity of the cryptographic money that you are storing in your computer? That the bank need to digitally sign it. Well, now it uses a concept that is called blind signature to make the payment anonymous. Well, so what is the idea of this blind signature? The idea of the blind signature is that someone would sign on the note that you are paying, but that authority who is going to sign, they will not be able to see the exact message. Well, so if you just try to map it with the first requirement that we had for cryptocurrency, that inability of the third parties to determine the pay, the time, and the amount of payments. So what it basically says that, well, these particular authorities, they are actually trying to authenticize the notes. Well, but they are not going to see that how much money has been paid or to whom it has been paid, or at what time it has been paid. So for that, it uses this concept of blind signature. So the idea of the blind signature is that the content of the message is blinded or disguised before it is signed. So if I try to explain this concept with an example, so what you can think of that you have a letter, so that letter contains certain credentials like the college icon, then the identity of the person who is actually sending it. Well, so what you need here, you need to verify that this particular signature is coming from an authenticated person. Well, so you need to verify the authenticity of the person, that well, it has been originated from an authentic person. Well, but you do not know that the person who is actually signing this particular letter or signing just in below of your authentication information, that means here in the left hand side, that information where it contains the name of the person and then the logo at the top, who is going to authenticate those things, they will not be able to see the content of the letter. Well, now in a physical world, how you can do it? You can basically, as you was mentioning, that you want to get your credential verified, but you do not want to reveal the text of the letter to the person who is verifying the credential. Well, so how we can do it in a physical world? So in a physical world, you can put up a carbon copy on the paper. Well, now on that carbon copy, what you can do, that you can put up that logo and your authentication on top of that carbon paper. Well, then ask the authority to verify this logo and the corresponding information of the person who is going to send the letter. So they will sign it. Now, whenever these signatures are being made, then see these signatures, because this is a kind of carbon copy, that particular signature gets inscribed on the letter, original letter itself. So what you do, that whenever you are sending this letter, you send it together. Well, so the letter as well as the originally signed carbon copy, you send it together to the other person, and whenever the other person gets the letter, the person can verify all the stuffs. Well, so the person can see that on top of the carbon paper, the authentication information is there, that is getting signed, and then if you remove the carbon paper, then on the original paper itself, you have the signature that got inscribed from the carbon paper. Well, that way, this particular document can also get verified. Well, now here actually you can see that the official has verified the credential of the person who has written it, but has not seen the main message, because the main message was behind this carbon paper. Well, so the official doesn't know the actual message. The official only knows that person X has sent some message to person Y. Or even by this method, you can hide the information of person Y if you do not want to reveal it to the person who is going to authenticate. And if you want that only your information will get verified. So this is the idea of the blind signature, and that idea of the blind signature is actually applied on the system. Okay. So with this particular approach, there are ways or in a cryptographic way, this concept of blind signature got mapped to the original eCash information that David Chaum has invented. And later on in 1989, David Chaum, he formed a company called DigiCash. Well, and the idea of the DigiCash was that DigiCash used eCash for this cryptographic transaction, but unfortunately, eCash couldn't provide much additional benefit to the system. Well, and eCash was in practice, eCash was not very popular among the people. Well, because this currency management overhead is more than banknotes. Because, say for example, every banknote that you are going to transmit or transfer, that particular banknote needs to be verified by the bank. Well, so because of that reason, this particular eCash was never very popular, and in 1998 this company got bankrupted. Well, so that was the kind of initial development of cryptographic currency or cryptocurrency, and there was concept of cryptocurrency that came to the market, But the problem is that this cryptocurrency was not very popular because the way you are going to manage the cryptocurrency, that management overhead is much more. Well, so this cryptocurrency that you need to get it verified from the bank for making it the transactions, then having this kind of blind signature in the market, getting this blind signature done, that blind signature also have its own overhead. Well, so any query or any question about this concept of blind signature or the way the initial cryptocurrency idea was there in the market? Any query from any one of you? Okay. So let me proceed further. So what we have seen that eCash was a kind of failure. Well, although David Chaum wanted to set it up in the market, there was a company who was promoting cryptocurrency at that time, but finally he couldn't success. The money didn't become popular among the participants, among the people, and the company got bankrupted. So people started thinking of that what was wrong in that idea, because initially they thought of that, well, possibly this physical money management is much more, people have more fear about the money being stolen and so on. But what is the problem here in the initial idea of that kind of cryptographic or cryptocurrency, the idea of the code cryptocurrency that was here? Well, so the thing is that what people have found out that this idea of cryptocurrency like eCash, it exactly has the same property of a physical money, of a physical currency notes. Well, but the overhead in managing the cryptocurrency was much more compared to these physical currency notes. Well, and the probability of a money being stolen, that was not very high. Well, so that's why people doesn't bother about it much. So people found it that, well, once in a lifetime my money will get stolen, but because of that I will move to cryptocurrency, which has much more overhead. So people didn't like it. So the researchers, the cryptographic researchers, they started thinking of whether we can add or whether we can include additional features on top of this cryptocurrency so that this idea becomes popular among the people. Well, so what change is being made, a small change has been made on that first property that was there. So the first property calls that inability of the third parties to determine the payee time or the amount of payment made by the individuals. But eCash have not considered bank as the third party. Well, you will see that what eCash does, eCash make the money digitally signed by the bank. Well, so that way the bank knows that how the money has been transferred or who is owning what amount of money. Well, so the cryptocurrency developers actually started thinking of that what if I can take the money out of control of the banks or out of governance of any kind of government. Well, and what are the advantage then we will get? The first advantage that we are going to gain is that this cross-currency trading becomes much more easier. So for example, the majority of the hurdle that we face today is like whenever you are going to transfer money from India to say USA. So you need a conversion from the Indian currency to the US dollar, and transferring money involves multiple different banks and multiple different governments. Well, and they actually put up lots of restrictions. They tried to see that, well, you will not be able to transfer this much amount of money from India to US. Well, but in practice, there are multiple businessmen. There are people who wanted to do such kind of cross-border trading, and with current money that we have, doing such kind of cross-border trading is very much controlled or very much limited to the wishes of the individual government. Okay, so here actually the cryptography developer, they made a kind of deviation. They thought of that, well, what if we try to design a currency that no bank or no government will be able to control. Well, So that means how the money is flowing in the market, even the banks will not be able to track. Well, now at that point of time, you may ask me the question that whether it will be legal, whether it will be economically viable. So as I have mentioned earlier, we are not going to discuss that here, that whether such kind of currency is going to be economically viable or whether that kind of currency should be legal or not, because there can be possibilities that these people can use it for unfair purpose, or people can so that the terrorists can even use it. You will not be able to track that how much money is going to the terrorists. So that way there are multiple different issues, legal issues or economical issues which are there with this cryptocurrency. So I'm not going to that. I'm just trying to focus on the requirement and see that how you can design a technology which meet that requirement. Okay. Now, whenever we are putting this requirement to it, people started thinking of an idea. Well, that how we can design such kind of currency which provides a complete distributed platform for cryptocurrency exchange. Well, now with that idea, in 1998, around the same time when DigiCash got bankrupted, around that time, Wei Dai, another cryptographer, he publishes an anonymous distributed electronic cash system called B-Money. Okay, so this B-Money was kind of having the property that this money transfer is completely distributed, and around the same time, Nick Szabo, he describes another idea called BitGold. Actually, this BitGold was the precursor of Bitcoin. Well, so the idea of Bitcoin that was proposed by Satoshi, it was or quite a good amount of it, or quite a good many of those ideas that was taken from this idea of BitGold. Well, so the idea of BitGold that Nick Szabo published or Nick Szabo described, that idea actually contained this concept of cryptographic puzzle. Well, so to solve a cryptographic puzzle that depends on the previous puzzle. So the idea is something that we used in case of hash chain. Well, so you need to find out the nonce such that you meet a target hash, and that target hash contains the previous non-types. Okay. So this BitGold actually introduced this idea of this cryptographic puzzle solving, and with that idea, it actually developed the initial structure of the blockchain. Well, but the idea that Nick published, that idea also had some kind of central control, that you still need some central control to verify that the puzzle has been solved correctly. So he couldn't design a way to decentralize the verification of the puzzle. Well, so that way the solution that Nick Szabo made, or even the solution that Wei Dai made, those solutions were not completely distributed. There was some level of centralized control inscribed. So finally came the question that can we verify the proof of puzzle solving in a completely distributed way? Well, so if we can do that, then this idea of using a kind of cryptographic puzzle solver to make a hash chain, a distributed hash chain, that can result as a backbone technology which can provide me an idea, or which can provide me a system that doesn't require any kind of centralized control. Well, so whenever we see that, well, can we verify the proof of the puzzle solving in a distributed way? Here comes the major challenge, that you see that for this verification, I need the distributed consensus algorithm. But here you can ask me the question that, well, by this time the distributed consensus literature was fairly popular, and there was by this time this concept of Paxos that got published. People were convinced about Paxos by the end of 1998, 1999, during that time, and people have started talking about the distributed systems. So what if I apply those distributed consensus algorithm to verify the puzzle solving? So what is the burden? Well, so here comes the much interesting story about blockchain. Okay, so that actually revolutionized or that actually put up this particular technology into limelight. Well, so what was that? That is distributed consensus. It actually says that majority of the participants need to agree that the puzzle has been solved correctly. Well, now if you look into the conventional distributed algorithm, that conventional distributed algorithm relies on message passing. Well, so that means what is your choice, you need to inform it to others. And then everyone get the choice of others. And from there, you will find out that whether majority agrees. If majority agrees, then you will say that, well, we have reached to a consensus. But this kind of message passing environment is not possible on a cryptographic currency or cryptocurrency. Why? Because message passing needs the identity of others, right? So whenever I am sending a message to you, I need to know your identity. Well, so then only I'll be able to send a message. Well, but what cryptocurrency says? The cryptocurrency says that we'll work much on a completely open environment where no one knows each other, no one knows that who is transferring what amount of money to where, but still we'll be able to correctly transfer the money from one person to another person. Because the moment you are putting identity information in those messages, those kind of control from the bank or control from the governance, that will come into place, because government will be able to see that, well, Shondip is transferring this amount of money to someone. Well, so that control we do not know. We do not want to reveal the identity. So here comes the challenge, here comes the question that how will we still able to design a system that will work on an open environment? Because these classical distributed consensus algorithms, they work within a closed system or within a closed environment. Well, so that was basically my major challenge, which was there, and because of which, even people knew that what is required for designing a cryptocurrency, and the distributed consensus algorithms were fairly popular and they were fairly established, but still people are not been able to apply those distributed consensus algorithms to the cryptocurrency design, because the distributed consensus algorithms only work in a closed environment, but cryptocurrency demand for an open environment. Well, so any query, any doubt up to this point? Okay, so let me proceed further. So what was actually the revolution? So the revolution was that in 2008, a white paper got floated on the internet, termed as Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, written by someone called Satoshi Nakamoto. Well, until now, no one knows that who is this Satoshi Nakamoto. Someone claims that, well, possibly that Nick Szabo was actually the Satoshi Nakamoto, but Nick Szabo, he repeatedly denied that he is not the Satoshi. Well, until now, this identity of Satoshi is not clear. Means no one knows who is this person. But this particular concept came into the market, which says that, well, we can design an open consensus algorithm. Well, and the consensus algorithm that was proposed by in this paper, in this Bitcoin paper, it combines multiple concepts together. It combines that concept of hashing, which was there in the market. Okay, it used this concept of puzzle solving as a proof. Well, so that kind of idea it has taken from the idea of BitGold. Well, then the additional thing that it introduced is the third part, which is the coin mining in an open peer-to-peer setup. Okay? That how you are going to validate that the blocks which are being proposed by someone, that particular block is a correct block. Okay? Or the proof that has been inscribed within the block, that is a correct proof. Well, so this particular mechanism, the way the coin has been mined in that open environment, for that he proposed an idea which is called the proof of work. Well, sometimes we call it as the Nakamoto consensus. We'll learn this proof of work later on in details. So currently, as I am just trying to give you an idea that how this technology got evolved over time, and finally we reached in the idea of blockchain. So this proof of work we'll discuss later on in details. But what proof of work did? That proof of work provided a consensus algorithm for an open environment. But the interesting question is this, that what is the key to success? Because the distributed consensus algorithm literature was fairly established, and as I was repeatedly mentioning that all the distributed consensus algorithms that have been published by that time, like this Raft, Paxos, Multi-Paxos, Byzantine fault-tolerant algorithm, the different kind of Byzantine agreement algorithms, all those algorithms are not applicable for a cryptocurrency. Well, so the primary reason because those algorithms are not applicable was it's one of its design choice. So if you remember that FLP impossibility theorem, which actually says that you cannot design a consensus algorithm in a complete asynchronous system, even when there is a single crash fault, and that consensus algorithm raised the development of distributed consensus algorithms, which actually provided more priority to the safety property, well, and less priority on the liveness property. So this Paxos, BFT, PBFT, RAF, all these algorithms, they ensure that whenever a group of participants is agreeing on a value, everyone agrees on the same value, or at least a majority agrees on the same value, and immediately you can see or you can mark that value as committed value. Okay, so you can say that this value has been committed. This is final. So you have something, we call it as the consensus finality. Well, so whenever you are running the consensus algorithm, the final agreement that was there, that agreement is the final agreement, the committed agreement, or the fixed agreement. Well, so that the safety property ensures, and people given weightage on that safety property. So they thought of that, well, let the algorithm runs for infinity if it couldn't find out an agreement, but if it can find out an agreement, that agreement will be final. Well, again, I am repeating this sentence because this sentence is very much important in this context. That whenever you are running a consensus algorithm, a distributed consensus algorithm, like Paxos, RAP, or BFT, what it says that, well, it is fine even if the algorithm runs for infinity and couldn't find out an agreement. But the moment it will find out an agreement, that agreement will be final. Well, so that way those algorithms have given priority to the safety property over the liveness property. But this proof of work, or the Nakamoto consensus, it made a pass from those idea or that philosophy. What it did, that it has given more emphasis on liveness rather than safety. So what it did, that it ensured that, well, this consensus algorithm should terminate within some time limit. Well, typically in the Bitcoin, that time limit is 10 minutes. So it ensures that within 10 minutes it should terminate. But it says that, well, immediately you may not reach to the final consensus. The final consensus may take more time. Right? Later on, whenever we'll discuss the structure of the Bitcoin blockchain, you will see that there are cases when two blocks get combined simultaneously. A part of the people are agreeing on one block, a part of another people in the open environment, they agree on a different block. Well, so that way, safety is not guaranteed immediately. But what they ensure that this block commitment, whatever block is being committed on the chain, that gets committed within a finite time, within a finite division. Well, so that way, this Nakamoto consensus has given priority to the liveness over safety, and that way they were able to reach to a consensus in an open environment. And the idea, the detailed idea of this proof of work or the Nakamoto consensus, as I mentioned, that we will discuss later on. Well, so as I was mentioning, that participants may agree on a transaction that is not the final one in the chain. Right? So how will we reach finality? We'll see it later. But the interesting thing is that in even in that paper of proof of work by Satoshi Nakamoto, it has not coined the term blockchain. Okay, it has used the term block and chain independently, but it has not merged the two terms. So if we then try to see that how the things got evolved over time, in 2011, another coin got introduced called Litecoin. Then 2015, the Ethereum network went live. Well, sometime around 2016, this term blockchain got popular. Now the question is that, one important question which is here, that this Nakamoto consensus, it relies on a philosophy that you need to solve some kind of complex puzzle. So that means you need to find out the value of nonce. And we have seen earlier that it is a non-deterministic problem. Okay, you cannot deterministically say that the puzzle is being solved or the puzzle has been solved within a finite number of iterations. You will try it out and eventually you will find out the value of nonce. So that was a problem, because that why someone will be interested to solve this kind of complex puzzle, why someone will be participated in generating a proof for a newly introduced block. Well, so there also Satoshi made an interesting idea, well, which actually made this entire idea of the Bitcoin popular. Well, so what it says that, well, by participating in this complex puzzle solving behavior, you can earn some money in terms of bitcoins. Well, so that means if you are contributing a new block to a blockchain, in return, you will get certain amount of Bitcoin from the system. Okay. So this particular economics that, well, to incentivize someone while that person is introducing new block in the system, that incentivization mechanism actually helps in motivating people to participate in Bitcoin mining procedure, and that actually made Bitcoin very popular. People started to develop new idea. People started to procure high computing facility to mine new Bitcoin. Well, so that's why the term Bitcoin mining came. So whenever you are proposing a new block, you will get some new Bitcoin. Well, and that new Bitcoins will be generated by the system. Well, so that way you can mine new Bitcoins in the system. Well, and you will be owning that Bitcoin. So that way, what happens that you can earn some amount of Bitcoin, and that actually made Bitcoin very much popular. Well, so this particular idea of economics that incentivizing people that solve two different problems in economy. One is that it encourages the community to participate in mining through incentivization. Well, because of which Bitcoin becomes a very much hype, and millions of people across the globe, they started mining Bitcoin. Well, so that they can earn money just by solving those cryptographic puzzles, just by finding out a nonce for a hash function. Well, and in other way, it produces new Bitcoins in the system, and that is actually one of the philosophy that typically the Reserve Banks uses for minting new coins. Well, so over the time, depending on the resources that are being produced in a country, the resources that are being utilized, the Reserve Bank puts some more money in the market to control this monetary stability in the economy. Well, so that is one of the basic philosophy behind the working of the Reserve Banks. Well, so it also introduces that idea in this mining procedure. Well, so that way, Bitcoin network itself started working like a reserve bank, a global reserve bank. Well, which can automatically regulate the flow of money in the market, but without any explicit governance. Well, you will control that how much Bitcoin is flowing in the market, but you will not be able to see, or you will not be able to stop someone to utilizing Bitcoin. Okay, so this economy, this particular economy, actually made Bitcoin very popular and made Bitcoin a kind of stable cryptocurrency in the market. Well, so it actually handled all the different technical challenges. The technical challenges from the perspective of distributed system. So Satoshi found out that, well, the classical distributed consensus algorithms, they are providing more weightage to the safety property, because of which they need some kind of fixed message passing environment, which is not possible in an open environment. So that way he thought of that, well, what if I provide the priority to the liveness, and whether that priority affects my cryptocurrency exchange in any way or not. Well, and later on you will see that this idea of proof of work, the way the Bitcoins are, the new blocks in the Bitcoin blockchains are getting added, that particular idea, although it doesn't support consensus finality, or although it does not support the safety property, but eventually it provides the correct transactions output. So we'll see that later, the detailed procedure of it we'll see later. Well, but it provides, it guarantees that the currencies have been maintained in a secure. Right? So that security property got ensured, and at the same time, that particular change in the philosophy, it helped him or her, we do not know, to design an open consensus mechanism. Well, and while designing that open consensus mechanism, another thought came into his or her mind that, well, it introduces this idea of puzzle solving. So one of the reasons that BitGold was a failure, because people are not interested in participating in that puzzle solving procedure, because no one knows that by solving that puzzle, what gain do I have? Well, whether I am going to gain anything or not. Well, if I do not have a gain, why I am going to interest to solve those puzzles, to spend my time or to spend my computing power to solve those puzzles. So that particular perspective, this Bitcoin paper, it introduces the concept of incentivization that actually balances the community to participate in the mining procedure, and at the same time it regulates the flow of Bitcoins in the system by producing new Bitcoins, and this production of new Bitcoin that you will see later on, that it changes over time. So it is like that sort of first block that Satoshi mined, that the first block of the Bitcoin network, by mining that particular block, Satoshi got a Bitcoin which equivalent to approximately $50. But nowadays, if you mine a new block, you will get something like $0.00001, something like that, in that range. Well, so very less amount you will get. So it changes over time. Well, that is also based on certain kind of economic principle to make the balance in the market. So it builds up or it integrates those kind of economics behind the design of these cryptocurrencies, such that it doesn't happen that there is a kind of money inflation in the market, or the Bitcoin inflation in the market. The amount of Bitcoin which is flowing in the market, that is in a stable state, that gets regulated. But there is no explicit governance on the users who are making transactions using Bitcoin. Well, so all these properties of Bitcoin, it actually made it very much popular. And from that point of time, people started thinking of that, what if I use this backend technology of Bitcoin, that is the blockchain, for other use cases. Well, so if you see the popularity of Bitcoin, you will see that Bitcoin as well as other cryptocurrencies like Litecoin and Ethereum, you will see that after 2017, they started increasing, and around 2018, it was a peak, kind of a peak, which was there. Right? So around that time, so the interesting fact is that around this time, people started thinking of new kind of applications on top of this Ethereum Bitcoin, or Ethereum blockchain. Well, so Ethereum introduced another kind of dimension in the blockchain technology. So what it does, that it introduces a concept called developing decentralized applications, or what it called as the DApps, using the Ethereum network. Well, that actually made this entire idea very popular, and it introduces something called a smart contract. Well, so that's why you will see that around 2018 there was this peak, and around that time people started talking about blockchain. Well, so any query or any question up to this point?
Sir, you said that the Nakamoto consensus relies on, like, focuses more on the liveness property. So
correct.
Isn't it like if like a fault in the system? Let's say two different sets of people agree on two different transactions, then for a short period of time, cannot an adversary just spend one money two times in two different regions?
No. So we'll see while we'll discuss about the proof of work mechanism, you will see that adversary will not be able to do that. Okay, so adversary will not be able to pay money twice. Well, so what might happen that this transaction finality, that means when the transaction is getting committed in the system, that might get it. So what we call actually, so this kind of problem, what you are calling, that is called in typical literature, it is known as double spend. Well, so we'll see that how double spending is getting prevented. So what might happen that momentarily you might see that this kind of double spending are there in two different blocks, and both the blocks are actually pointed to the same parent block. Well, so for the time being, I'm not using the terminology which are related to that. It's actually called a Bitcoin pot. So that might happen momentarily, but eventually the system will be able to detect those kind of double spending, and it will eliminate one of the transactions from the system. Okay. So that way the consensus finality gets to, but it ensures correctness. It ensures actually eventual correctness, not the immediate correctness. And that is the reason there is a restriction on Bitcoin that the moment a transaction gets added in the blockchain, you do not assume that the transaction is final. Well, you wait for some amount of time. Typically in Bitcoin literature, it is something like that. You need to wait for 100 more number of blocks to actually ensure that the transaction get committed in the system. Right, so this kind of restrictions are there. So I will get to this point in much more details whenever we will discuss about this proof of work consensus.
Okay, sir.
Any other query? Okay. So if you see the evolution of blockchain, how blockchain evolved over time. So initially the blockchain, we used to call it as blockchain 1.0, but this term 1.0 was very much fuzzy. Okay, different articles or different literature, they define it in different ways. So I have just taken some notion. So the initial version of the blockchain that used the distributed ledger technology to design the money of the internet, that means the Bitcoins and the other cryptocurrencies. Around 3rd January 2019, Nakamoto mined the first block of the Bitcoin network. Well, that first block of the Bitcoin network, we call this the Genesis block. So on 3rd January 2019, the Genesis block was mined. In 2013, Coinbase, which actually monitors this Bitcoin network evaluation, it reported selling of $1 million worth of Bitcoin. Well, now, if you see that how the Bitcoin value increased drastically over time, around May 2010, the value of one Bitcoin was less than $0.01. Around April 2014, it was in the range of $340 to $530. Around December 2017, it was $13,800. And can you tell me that, just a wild guess, do not see the internet, just a guess, that what was the Bitcoin price yesterday night? Any idea?
Around 45K.
Yeah, around 45K. Well, so 45,000. That was the price of one Bitcoin. So it increased drastically over time. Anyway, but with this kind of popularity of Bitcoin, people started thinking of another type of applications over kind of cryptocurrency network that actually revolutionizes with the development of Ethereum. Okay, so what is called as the smart contract. So what is a smart contract? A smart contract is a mechanism for automatic execution of the contracts or the codes over a decentralized network. Okay, so what is the code idea? The code idea is something like this, that whenever you are writing a program can be represented in the form of a state transition diagram. Okay, so that I guess all of you know that any kind of algorithm or any kind of program that you are writing, you can represent that program in the form of a Mealy machine or a form of a Moore machine, which is nothing but a finite state operator. Well, now if I can represent a program in the form of a state machine, well, so here is an example. I just tried to write an hypothetical program that there is a condition called deliver good. Okay, so it will take the count of number of goods that need to be delivered and the price per count. So it points a success if it is able to successfully pay, and the pay function, what it does, it checks that whether the sender has sufficient amount of balance which is required. If it is not, then it return -1. Otherwise, it deduct the money from the sender account, add the money to the receiver account, and sends a +1. Right? Now, if the money has been transferred successfully, in that case, we schedule the logistics or we schedule the transfer of the money. Well, transfer of the code. So this particular code you can represent in the form of a block state transition diagram. So maybe my state get represented by 3 variables: sender account, receiver account, and count. The sender account contains the amount I, the receiver account contains the amount J, and the count contains G currently. Now, whenever I am making a call to deliver goods, well, I am making a call to say deliver goods with 10 items and 4 rupees per item. And if my payment is success, I move to the next step. Well, so the sender account is deducted, the receiver accounts get added, and the count get increased. Now, these individual states, so what we can do that we can take the help of a blockchain to execute this code in a decentralized way over multiple participants. So what is the code idea? The code idea is that what you do, you put the state of executions in a blockchain. How does it help? That way, everyone can independently execute this code, well, and they can verify that whether the output state matches with the state which is there in the blockchain. Okay, all of them can agree on that. All of them collectively agree on the output state of this program. Well, so this particular idea that putting the states in the blockchain and then verify the states across multiple participants, that facilitates us to design or for kind of automated execution on the contracts, automated execution of the contracts over a kind of decentralized network. And that kind of automated execution of contracts, we call it a smart contract. Okay, so in the next class, you will be seeing that how the smart contract technology got evolved and how you can develop interesting applications with the help of smart contract. So today I'm going to stop here. So let me know if you have any questions on this overall idea. Any query? Okay, if not, then let us stop here today. Let us continue the discussion in our next class and try to see that how this idea of smart contract actually opens up a new door in the design of blockchain. Well, so which actually made blockchain further popular, as we have seen in the previous class, that suddenly in 2018, with the invention of cryptocurrency, there is a spike in utilization of the technology for general. Okay, fine then. If there are no other questions, then let us close the class for today. So we'll be meeting in the next week, next Wednesday. So thank you.